previous class we started looking at how to extract maximum power from a given network. That is, a network contains some independent sources and linear components. Okay. Then we assume that we have to connect some load resistance to it and adjust the value of the load resistance such that maximum power is dissipated in the load resistance or absorbed by the load resistance. Okay. Now, this has practical significance. There are many situations in which you have some signal source with limited power and you have to sense the signal. There is always a problem with sensing that many of the sensors give out very small amounts of energy. So, you have to extract as much as possible to accurately sense whatever it is that you are trying to sense. Okay. And one of the examples is a radio where because electromagnetic waves travel far through the air, you have very small amounts of power reaching the receiver antenna. So, you have to make maximum use of all the power that you can get. So, this business of extracting maximum power appears there also. So, firstly we do know that any network that we have with independent sources and linear components can be reduced to a voltage source in series with a resistance or a current source in parallel with a resistance. And we will assume that in this particular context both RTH and RN are more than 0. This is not necessarily true when you have control sources inside, but this is definitely true if you have only resistors inside the network. And the problem that we were looking at was to connect a load resistance here, RL, and vary it such that PL, the power dissipated in RL, is maximized. Okay. RL itself represents some load that, let us say, makes sense of whatever signal is being received. And it is very easy to calculate. We saw that if we do this, and again we also assume obviously that RL is more than 0. So, RL should be equal to RTH, the internal resistance of the source, okay, and this is known as matching the load for maximum power transfer. So, there are lots of if we write it with the voltage sources and resistors, it is simple, you just have to connect that resistance value there. But you will see later, when we introduce frequency dependent components like capacitors and inductors, that you may have to do this only at some particular frequency. So, the network that is actually used to extract the maximum power can look quite complicated. But in every case, this is exactly what it does. It matches the load resistance to the source resistance. Okay. It is also important not to confuse this with the other case where you have a fixed load and varying source resistance. There, of course, you minimize the source resistance. In this case, you have to set RTH equal to 0 to extract maximum power into RL, and similarly here you have to set Rn equal to infinity to get all the current flowing in RL and maximize it. Okay. This is fine. So, this is the maximum power transfer condition. Any questions about this? The derivation is extremely simple. There are so many ways that you can do this. Now, the power dissipated in the load is maximum power that value that is possible for this is when RL equals RTH. This is equal to what? VTH square by 4 RTH. Okay. Now, this is known as the available power. Okay. Now, one of the viewpoints that is taken, not so much in circuits, but as you will see later in transmission lines and electromagnetics and so on, is to think of this combination VTH and RTH. This is a power source of available power VTH square by 4 RTH. Okay. So, you can think of this as a power source. Of course, the way it is now, it is not delivering any power, nothing is connected to it, but that is the maximum power that you can extract from it. Now, if you match it perfectly for a perfectly matched load, absorbs the available power. Okay. If I call this whatever power is available, it absorbs it. Now, if it is not perfectly matched, that is if you do not set RL equals RTH, we know that the power is going to be less, but one way of thinking about it is to imagine that this is sending the available power this way. Okay. The load, because it is not perfectly matched, it is reflecting a certain amount of power. Okay. So, the total power that goes to the load is whatever you send versus whatever it sends back. Okay. So, that is another viewpoint. I mean, the results will exactly be the same, and like I said, in this type of circuits we do not use it often, but it is a very useful viewpoint. It just makes sense to become familiar with it. Okay. And later you will see that in electromagnetics and so on, this is very widely used viewpoint. Okay. So, please calculate this. What I want is when RL is not matched to the source, I want to write the actual power in the load as P available minus P reflected, and that is also sometimes written as P available 1 minus gamma square, okay, where this gamma is the reflection coefficient. Okay. So, you know the simple calculations, just calculate the reflected power and gamma, the reflection coefficient. Okay. So, you are able to get it. What do you get the reflection coefficient to be? Yeah. Obviously, it is a measure of reflection or how different RL is from RTH, right. So, if RL was equal to RTH, the reflection coefficient would be 0. So, PL is VTH square times RL by RL plus RTH square, and that is equal to, I will use this form, I will not calculate the reflected power separately, but this is VTH square by 4 RTH times 1 minus gamma square. So, minus gamma square is 4 RTH RL by RL plus RTH square. Okay. And if you simplify this, I think you will see that it is RL minus RTH square by RL plus RTH square, right? Is this correct? Yeah. The reflection coefficient is therefore, I'll just take the positive square root, RL minus RTH by RL plus RTH. Okay. What is the range of gamma? Huh? 0 to? No, I have taken the absolute value. 0 to 1. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, reflection coefficient is either reflects nothing, in which case the reflection coefficient is 0, or at most it can be 1 when it is reflecting everything, right? So, I mean, because I have taken it this way, I mean, sometimes it's defined without the modular signs. Here we just don't worry about it. Then you can have -1 or 1. It also tells you whether RL is more or less than RTH in that case, but let's not get into that. Okay. And how do you get gamma of 0? By perfectly matching it, right? So if you have RL equals RTH, you will have gamma to be 0. It reflects nothing. How do you have gamma of 1? RL is 0. Is that the only possibility? RL is infinity. Okay, both of them. I mean, if you have either an open circuit termination or a short circuit termination, nothing is dissipated, right? If you have an open circuit, there will be voltage across the open circuit but no current, and if you have a short circuit, there will be current through the short circuit but no voltage across it. In either case, the power into the load is 0. Okay. So this is exactly like you shine light on a perfect mirror, it reflects everything, or you shine it on a black body where it absorbs everything, right? A black body is matched to everything, right? So for us, this is all we do. I mean, like I said, this is a viewpoint you can take, and it's very useful in some situations. Okay. Normally in circuits, we just calculate the power that is dissipated and move on. But this, as you can see, given a source, there is some amount of power, and you can absorb all of it or a part of it and reflect the rest of it back. Okay. Any questions about this? And like I also said, these things make a lot more sense when you come to electromagnetics and so on. Okay. Any questions about any of the circuit theorems we discussed? Thevenin's theorem, Norton's theorem, power transfer theorem? If you have an ideal voltage source, how do you extract the maximum power from this? What should you connect to extract the maximum power? Huh? Zero resistance, right? I mean, what is the internal resistance here? It is 0. Of course, you should connect a short circuit to it to absorb maximum power. But what is the available power of this source? What's available power? Infinite. Okay. So, ideal sources, either the ideal current source or ideal voltage source, has infinite available power. So, you get this silly condition that you have to terminate it in a short circuit, but it's not so silly in that if you do have a short circuit with a voltage across it, you have infinite power there also. Of course, in reality, you never have a source with infinite available power. Okay. So, you always have only finite available power. Okay. So, in this case, in practice, if you do have an ideal, if you ever come close to having an ideal voltage source, you just connect the smallest resistance that you can to absorb the power. Okay. So, by the way, another way to think of this is, so let's say you are varying RL. We know from our calculations that when RL equals RTH, you get maximum power into RL. Now, what happens is, let's say you start with very large values of RL, then the current flowing will be very small. So, that is why the power is very small. In fact, if RL is infinity, you have no current and no power in RL. As you reduce RL, this situation improves. The more and more current starts flowing into RL. But beyond some point, what happens is RL becomes so small, the voltage across it starts falling down. Okay. So, that is when the power falls down again. So, it reaches a maximum when RL equals RTH, right. So, you can't naively try to either maximize the voltage or the current through it. To maximize the voltage across RL, you need as high an RL as possible, right. To maximize the current through RL, you need as low an RL as possible. So, that way most of it the current will be nearly equal to VTH by RTH. But neither of them maximizes the power. To maximize power, you should have a reasonable amount of voltage and current. Okay. So, that happens for some intermediate value, and we have already calculated that happens when RL equals RTH. Okay. Who are you? Huh? So, any questions about the power transfer theorem? Okay. So, now we have looked at networks with two terminals exposed, right. This two terminal network, it is also known as a one port network. One port means that there is one place where you can connect a source. Okay, port is just a door for power or anything that you want to connect. So, this is a one port network, and this one port is 1 1 prime. Okay, so that is where you can connect a source and this. So, this one we know, I would say we know this very well. We know when it has independent sources and resistances, what happens, how to represent it and so on. Okay. Now, we will move on to circuits with more terminal pairs or more ports. Okay. Of course, we will just do two ports, and then I think from there it will be very clear how to generalize to higher number of ports. Okay. So, first of all, let us say I take this. And let us say that now I am looking at a case where there are linear control sources and resistors. In particular, there are no independent sources in the circuit. No independent sources. I call this network N. There are no independent sources inside this. Okay. So, let us say I connect a voltage source to it. What can you say about all the branch voltages and currents in the circuit? You understand the question? I have a network N, it has only it has no independent sources, voltage source or current source, but it has linear resistors and linear control sources. Okay, and there are two terminals coming out of it, one port, and to that one port I connect a voltage source Vs. So what can you say about the all the voltages and currents in the network N? What is that? Proportional to Vs. How do you know? Huh? Yeah, there are many ways to do this. You can imagine, let's say, a nodal analysis solution where you have the source vector, every element would be 0 except one of them, right? And the solution is the node voltages will be G inverse times this. So obviously this will be in this you will have basically if the kth column is kth row here is Vs, then it will be kth column times Vs. That's the solution, right? So anyway, we are dealing with linear circuits, so everything with a single source, everything will just be proportional to that one source. Okay. Similarly, if you have a single current source, obviously every branch voltage and branch current will just be proportional to Is, as long as we don't have any other independent sources. Okay. Is this fine? Now let's take a two-port network. This is typically how it is represented. You show basically 4 terminals, but later we will see examples of 3-terminal 2 ports also. But the important thing is there are only 2 ports here. Okay, that is, I can connect a source either between 1 1 prime or between 2 2 prime. Okay, I don't connect something between 1 prime and 2 prime and so on. Again, I will assume that this has linear elements, that is resistors and linear control sources. Okay. So I have a 2-port network with 2 ports 1 1 prime and 2 2 prime. I connect the voltage source V1 to 1 1 prime and I connect the voltage source V2 to 2 2 prime. Okay. So what will be the form of all the branch voltages and currents in the network? What's that? Linear combination of V1 and V2. Okay. Again, it's a linear network with 2 sources, so everything will be linear combination of V1 and V2. Right? Now, when we had a 1-port network, okay, like this with no independent sources inside, and we had to characterize its behavior at the terminals 1 1 prime, how would we do it? What is the equivalent circuit? A resistance. Essentially what we do is, let's say we have a voltage source here, then we can look at how much current flows there. That will obviously be proportional to Vs, right? Some current I will flow through this network and that will be proportional to Vs, and the proportionality constant is a conductance, not a resistance. Okay. So you can characterize it by the conductance G between these 2 terminals. That single number is enough to characterize it. It's the ratio of current to voltage. And if you look at the other viewpoint, if you have Is being injected, you will have some voltage developed here, which will be proportional to Is. It will be some R times Is. And this is also a representation at those 2 terminals. Okay, this is all trivial. I think you know this already. Now, obviously, these 2 are related because they are representing the same network, and we also know that obviously R is 1 by G. Okay. Is this fine? So we know 2-terminal networks, and if you have a 2-terminal linear network or a 1-port linear network, a single number is enough to describe that. Okay. There are many cases when you have 2 ports or more ports. how many numbers do we need to describe this? What will we describe it by? Okay, let's say you look at the scenario. I have two ports. To each port I have connected a voltage source, right? So, what would I measure and what would I describe? Remember, in the earlier case I connected a voltage source, measured the current that is going into the one port and described it that way. So, here what should I measure? I have to describe the behavior at the two ports, right? I am not interested in going into the circuit now. So, what is it that I will measure? Huh? Currents? Yeah, I think you have two ports, you will measure the two currents I1 and I2. Okay? That's all we did earlier also, right? We had one port, we connected a voltage source and measured the current. Now we have two ports, we connect two voltage sources and measure the two currents. And how many numbers will we need to describe this? Huh? 4. What did you say? 4. Why? Yeah. So I1, what do you expect the form of I1 to be? Something times V1. You just said it's a linear combination, right? Every branch voltage and current is a linear combination of V1 and V2. So this is also something times V1 plus something times V2. And this I2 is also something times V1 plus something times V2. So these four numbers together will describe the two port, right? So again, just like you can have one port with thousands of components, but at the port it is described by a single number. Here a two port can have thousands of components, but as long as you are looking at the behavior at the ports, it can be described by just four numbers. Okay? Yeah? Huh. Yeah, you tell me. Is that true? So if you have, what is asking is, if V1 and V2 are 0, will I1 and I2 be equal to 0? Yes or no? Why? There are no independent sources in the circuit. Okay. So linearity means that it has to be homogeneous, right? So if you have 0 excitation, you should have 0 response. So it will be true. So this, earlier I wrote it, there are no independent sources inside. Okay. What will be the dimensions of these four numbers? Huh? In this case, conductances. Okay. Now these four numbers are called the two port parameters. Okay. Now, in case of the one port, we saw that we could either apply a voltage source and measure the current, then the current by voltage will give you the conductance, and in the other case we can apply a current source and measure the voltage. Okay, the ratio of voltage to current will give you the resistance. They are describing the same thing and the two numbers are related, they are just reciprocals of each other. Okay, it's just a matter of convenience which one you use. Similarly here, there is no reason that I have to connect voltage sources, right? I could connect current sources also. Okay. So I could, for instance, in this case the currents are the independent variables and each voltage will be a linear combination of the two currents. Is this correct? What will be the dimensions of these numbers? Resistances, obviously. Now, are these the only two possibilities? What else can I do? I can have voltage on one side and current on the other side. So, there are two such things, right? I can have voltage on port 1 and current on port 2, or current on voltage on port 2 and current on port 1. Okay. So, basically these four, the network is still the same, right? So, you will get different numbers in each cases. Obviously, the numerical value of the conductance and resistance are not the same. Similarly, these four numbers will be different in each of these scenarios, but they will have a definite relationship between them, because obviously the network is still the same. But which one you use depends on convenience. Maybe it also depends on the scenario in which the network itself is used. Okay. So, you can have all these different types of two port parameters. They will have different dimensions and so on, right? Because if you make currents the independent variables, these proportionality constants will have dimensions of resistances. If you make voltages as independent variables, these proportionality constants will have dimensions of conductance and so on. Okay. So, these give different sets of two port parameters. Okay. Is this fine? So, in general, you can write a linear two port. A linear two port means it can have linear elements inside, and I showed it as being excited by voltage sources or current sources. Basically, what we are looking at is simply the relationship between the voltage across these terminals and the current through these terminals. Okay. Exactly how they are driven is not important, okay, because this relationship is a property of the network. Okay. What I mean to say is the following. So, let us say you have a one port, okay, and I drive it with a voltage source, and the ratio of the voltage across this to current through this is some resistance. That is not related to whether it is driven by a voltage source or not. Whether you drive it with a current source or some source with some resistance, the property of this network does not change. Okay, it is just convenient to think of exciting them with either voltage or current sources, but the parameters are not dependent on how you measure them. Okay. So, we have this relationship between these are what are known as two port parameters. Okay. Any questions? It is exactly like the resistance of a one port. You have one port, you have one number to describe it. You have two ports, you have two voltages and two currents, and you have four numbers to describe the relationships. If you have three ports, how many? 9. Yeah, there will be 9 numbers, right? Because you have basically 3 voltages and 3 currents. Okay. So, in this particular case, I will write I1 as something times V1 plus something else times V2, and I2 as something times V1 plus something else times V2. And as we already discussed, these numbers will have dimensions of conductances, and this is denoted by the letter Y for reasons you will find out later. These things can be confusing. Sometimes notations follow some historical viewpoint and so on. So, Y12, Y21 and Y22. So, this is the standard notation, and in this particular case, when you are expressing currents in terms of voltages, these 4 parameters, this is also expressed as in matrix form, Y12, Y21, Y22. These are known as the Y parameters of the network N, and this is like the conductance. Okay, it's not a single number, it's a 2 by 2 matrix. And this notation, maybe if you are not familiar with it, takes some getting used to. But basically, the first number denotes the effect, comes from the effect, and the second one is the cause. Okay. So basically, Y21 is the ratio of I2 to V1, with V2 being 0. Okay. Y21 measures the effect of V1 on I2. This is okay. So this is just a matter of getting used to, that's all. Obviously, the same thing can be written as I1, I2 equals this times V1, V2. The current vector is the Y parameter matrix times the voltage vector. Okay. Any questions here? If I gave you a black box with 2 ports, how would you measure this? I will let you into the lab. How would you measure this? So I just give you a black box with 2 ports. In the lab you have voltage sources, current sources, whatever you want to have, and all the kinds of meters, voltmeter, ammeter. Okay. So just tell me how you will get these 4 numbers. Huh? What's that? Louder. Superposition what? No, just tell me the measurement process. What should I do? Okay. Yeah. So that's the most obvious way of measuring it, right? You first set V1 to some non-zero value, V2 to 0. Okay. Then you will get these 2 parameters. You will measure the current flowing into port 1 and measure the current flowing into port 2. Okay. And then you set V1 to 0 and V2 to a non-zero value, and you will get these 2 parameters. Okay. So that's how you measure it. By the way, notice that from the perspective of the 2 port, these signs do follow the passive sign convention, right? I have V1 and I1 is pointing into the positive terminal of V1. Okay, so that's how we always use the convention. Is this okay? V2 is 0, yeah. No, if you are terminated in a short circuit, no voltage can develop. So, remember, you always have to measure the currents in this direction. Okay. The other cases, these values will be different in these places. Okay. So from this measurement we will get Y11, which is basically simply the conductance looking into this port, right? Because we are just measuring I1 divided by V1. Okay. For instance, if I hit the remaining part of it, it just looks like this is a 1 port, the conductance we are measuring. Okay. We are measuring the conductance looking into port 1 with port 2 short circuited. Okay. Is this clear or? So this is I1 by V1 with V2 set to 0, and Y21 is I2 by V1. Basically, if you apply something in port 1, how much of it goes to port 2, okay, with V2 being 0. And similarly here, Y12 is I1 by V2. If you apply something to port 2, how much of it comes back to port 1 with V1 being 0. And Y22, it's the conductance looking into port 2 with port 1 short circuited, okay. That's what this is, and this is similar. Is this okay? Essentially, we measure two conductances and two transconductances, right? So this Y21 and Y12, they are also ratios of current to voltage, but the voltage is somewhere and the current is elsewhere, okay. So in this case, we apply voltage here and measure the current there, and in the other case, we apply the voltage in port 2 and measure the current into port 1, okay. Now you can see, even without knowing further a lot about circuits, this is the kind of description that you would have for an amplifier and so on, right. An amplifier has an input where you plug the mic and an output where you connect the speaker, okay. So where you plug the mic is port 1, where you connect the speaker is port 2. Obviously, you want a large gain in one direction. That is, if you plug something small, if you apply a small signal into port 1, a large signal must come out of port 2. That's why you get amplification, right. You speak softly into the mic and you get a blast out of the loudspeaker. Whereas the other way, I mean, this is specific to the amplifier. Maybe you shouldn't have anything. You should not have, when you connect something to port 2, nothing should come back here. Many times such things can give rise to oscillation, right, which you have experienced. If I take the mic out there where the speaker sound directly goes into the mic, it will burst into some oscillation, okay. So these two port parameters are typically used to characterize amplifiers. Basically, anytime you have two places where you can connect other circuits, you have this, okay. So again, the purpose of doing all of this is to, the underlying circuit may become very complicated, but you need to have simpler descriptions, right, as you build up more and more complex circuits. Every time you want to describe this amplifier, you don't want to like open the box and look at the thousands of components inside, okay. You just want to know, if I apply 1 millivolt at the input, how much comes out there. That can be described by just one number. You don't need the description of all the insides of that, okay. So the whole purpose of two port parameters is that. So what we will do is, we have looked at the definition of this Y parameters. We will look at the other parameters also. Now it's kind of obvious, you can do it as an exercise, right. So you can apply currents and find voltages. They will be called Z parameters or impedance or resistance parameters. And similarly, you can have some hybrid parameters where you apply voltage on one side and current on the other side. And for a given network, there will be some relationship between the Y parameters and Z parameters, and the other two happen to be called G and H parameters, so them as well, okay. And then there are some specific types of two ports which will impose some constraints on the parameters. Those also we'll see, okay. Please think about these things. These are, I would say, a little bit boring perhaps, because these are all matters of definition. But the thing is, if you are given a two port with the four parameters, with the parameter matrix, you should be able to do calculations, okay, carry out calculations on the two port, okay. For instance, if maybe you can just do this as an exercise after the class. So if let's say the two port parameters happen to be you should be able to figure out what the voltage across, let's say this is the load, what the voltage across the load is, and so on, okay. So please try to do this. We will continue from there.